We often think that images of devastated cities and people living in ruins only appear in remote, impoverished cities. But Oakland, California, seems to be becoming the clearest example of a reality America doesn't dare to accept. A city collapsing right in the heart of America's wealthiest state. As night falls, the streets of Oakland are no longer a place to stroll. They became a haven for sin, vice, and the rise of urban decay. The number of homeless people continues to increase uncontrollably. The crime rate is escalating. Tourism is plummeting. The local economy was devastated. Parks, museums, and schools, once symbols of civilization, have now become makeshift shelters. What caused a city that was once full of promise to fall into this state? Is it due to economic decline, flawed policies, or a lack of effort at multiple levels? In today's video, we'll delve into the heart of Oakland at night, a place where even the streetlights couldn't dispel the darkness of lostness and despair. This is not just a story about a city, but perhaps also a warning for a future of an entire nation that no one wants to face. Just a few hundred meters off the highway, a scene completely opposite to many people's perception of a coastal tech city immediately appears. On both sides of the road were rows of shanty towns, hastily built from plywood, plastic tarps, and old camper vans. The rusty RVs, once the travel vehicles of the middle class, are now the permanent homes for hundreds of people, many of whom are still working but cannot afford an apartment. On the concrete walls, graffiti is layered thick like a dust of time. No longer an expression of street art, but chaotic, desperate, and uncontrolled traces. What stunned people wasn't just the post-war devastation in the heart of an American city. It was the speed at which symbols that once represented order and trust were retreating. In-N-Out Burger, the iconic fast food chain known for its "We're Everywhere," has officially closed its last location in Oakland. The irony is that the store is still profitable. But what they can't buy is safety. Looting, destruction, and dangerous behavior are no longer unusual events, but have become the default risk in daily activities. Employees started asking for transfers, and customers hesitated to enter. And then, In-N-Out withdrew. Not because of financial failure, but because of an environment where stable values no longer had a place. Even Walmart, a corporation known for its ability to survive anywhere from deserts to the poorest rural areas, has permanently closed its last store here. A city of more than 430,000 people and not a single Walmart left. For those living on modest salaries, the withdrawal of budget brands is not just a shopping matter, it's a sentence on their daily lives. They not only lost a place to buy affordable food, but also the last remaining anchors of a stable life. When even brands that were once symbols of the masses are fleeing Oakland, can the American dream survive on streets riddled with potholes, abandoned stores, and broken trust? Amidst the paradox of withdrawal and stagnation, house prices continue to escalate. The average home in Oakland is now listed for $913,000, not only far exceeding the national average, but also higher than the California state average, which is already known for being expensive. The cost of living index here is 182, compared to the national average of 100, meaning you'd have to live on nearly double the spending of most Americans. So, what happens when income doesn't keep pace with the increase in house prices? The answer is right on the streets, when thousands of people, even with decent jobs, are forced to live in their cars, simply because a decent roof has become a luxury privilege reserved for the few. But housing isn't the only issue. Everything in Oakland seems to begin and end with crime. And it's no longer limited to dark alleys or dangerous areas. It's present in broad daylight, among crowds, and even while you're sitting in your car. Smash and grab incidents, breaking windows to steal property, are happening with such speed and audacity that many people describe it as, "Before I could even take out my car keys, my phone was gone." A Shell gas station in Oakland has been called the most dangerous in America by the media due to the high number of robberies and injuries there. Some people are even robbed while pumping gas, right in broad daylight. Although the statistics still paint a seemingly stable picture for Oakland, with a median household income of up to $93,000, higher than the national average, the reality on the ground tells a completely different story. When a city doesn't have enough housing for workers, there are not enough safe stores to shop in. There is no longer safety when night falls. If those beautiful numbers can't prevent the collapse we're witnessing. So what's really running this city? When things that were once basic, like a roof over your head, a safe meal, or a reliable store, become luxuries. How much does the America of today still resemble the America we once believed in? Oakland, a city once illuminated by the lights of shipyards, railroads, and the American dream fueled by the working class, is now gradually fading into the darkness of tents, trash, and the bewildered gazes of marginalized residents. No longer a place where people come to build careers or find opportunities, Oakland now resembles a city in a pre-collapse state, where even the police are beginning to withdraw from certain areas after sunset. More than 5,000 people are homeless in Oakland, nearly double the number from 5 years ago. But that number isn't just a statistic, it's the embodiment of thousands of stories that once held hope. They are veterans in faded uniforms, single mothers pushing strollers on trash-filled sidewalks, and elderly people living on Social Security but unable to afford a small room. The American dream, once considered for everyone, is now, for them, just scattered pieces on an empty lot filled with rocks and trash. This situation is not caused by an earthquake, natural disaster, or the direct consequences of the pandemic. It started quietly, from soaring house prices and living costs far exceeding incomes to reduced welfare programs. And then, like a domino effect, people started falling out of the system, one by one, until a large part of the city was no longer on the political map, but existed as grey areas, where there was no law, no civil rights, and no way out. One of the most striking iconic images of this crisis is the Wood Street encampment, considered the backbone of Oakland's homeless community for many years. After delays due to weather and legal battles, the city has begun clearing the entire camp to make way for 170 affordable housing units. A policy that sounds humane, but for those who have lived there for decades, this place is not a public dump. It is the only place left to call home. The community's reaction was immediate. Many people refused to leave as the proposed temporary shelters are just cabins lacking electricity, water, and privacy, and to them are no different from miniature prisons. A resident shared, "We are rooted here like trees deeply planted in the ground. We are not strangers here. We are a part of it." City officials claim to have prepared 100 community cabins and a safe RV park at a total cost of over $8.3 million. But that figure did not alleviate the concerns of those ordered to leave, because they knew that temporary solutions do not heal permanent wounds. When you've been evicted 3, 4, or even 10 times, you no longer believe that your next home will last longer than the rainy season. Worse, this story doesn't just stop at Wood Street. It's happening all over Oakland's districts, a revolving door between the homeless and the system, like an endless game of cat and mouse. There's no place that's truly for them. No doors are left open for too long. And in all those chases, the loss wasn't just a place to sleep. It was the feeling of being recognized as a human being. Are we truly addressing the root cause of the problem? Or are we just trying to hide it under temporary corrugated iron roofs? And if a system can't understand the basic needs of the vulnerable, then who will speak for them? In Oakland, the phrase affordable housing seems to have become a linguistic relic, something that once existed in memory, but now only exists on unapproved urban plans. Once a place where workers could buy homes, raise children, and hope for a secure future, Oakland has now become one of the most expensive real estate markets in the United States, even as its neighborhoods grow emptier. Of the 5,000 homeless people in the city, over 75% have no shelter at all, other than makeshift tents under bridges, rusty RVs parked by the roadside, or even the back seats of cars. Some are veterans, while others are part-time employees at a chain store like Walgreens or Target. They are not unemployed, but they are too poor to rent an apartment for $2,200 a month, the average rent here. All basic costs are also escalating. A loaf of bread costs nearly $6. A dozen eggs costs over $8. For a retiree living on Social Security or a part-time Starbucks employee, the problem of survival in Oakland is unsolvable. And any support budgets, if they exist, are also considered too slow and too small. Although Governor Gavin Newsom committed $28 million for 2024 to expand affordable housing and rental subsidies, the actual implementation has not kept pace with the rate at which people are losing their homes. Temporary shelters are also overcrowded. Oakland has approximately 100 and 200 beds, 280 RV parking spaces, and 600 permanent housing units for the homeless. But all of this meets less than half of the actual need. Many people refuse to enter shelters because they fear for their safety, are not allowed to bring personal belongings, or simply don't want to live in a cramped environment with a lack of privacy. A situation that organizations like Home First, East Oakland Collective, and Covenant House have repeatedly warned about. The irony is that solutions that seem thoroughly effective, such as clearing tent camps, are pushing hundreds of people into a new crisis. Many people lose all their personal assets after just one foreclosure. Some people have to start over from scratch and don't even have a place to go back to. This crisis doesn't just affect those living on the streets. It's hurting the very soul of the city. Small businesses can't afford to rent space. Schools are underfunded. The local healthcare system is overloaded. And above all, the quality of life for all residents, including those who already own homes, is also declining. Can a city still be called a livable place when the people who built it, from workers, teachers, and veterans, can't afford to live in the very place they once called home? And if a roof has become a privilege, how many other basic necessities will fall into the hands of the few? There was a time when Oakland was not just a name on a map. It was an icon. A bustling port city where cargo ships come and go without rest, where workers, mechanics, and technicians pour in from all over, building lives from sweat and their own hands. From coastal factories to machine shops near the port, Oakland was once known as the working-class backbone of the Bay Area, a place where you didn't need a college degree to have a decent life, just hard work and a willingness to get your hands dirty. But that golden age has passed and left almost no farewell. As factories closed one by one, as railroad lines were cut, and as goods began to be produced more cheaply elsewhere, thousands of people lost their jobs in just a few years, without fanfare, without anyone remembering their names. Those who once poured concrete for the Bay Bridge, drove forklifts at the port, or repaired machinery in industrial zones, now sit under the bridge, their hands still calloused, but their pockets empty. This collapse didn't happen overnight. It happened step by step, like a chronic illness. Shops selling personal protective equipment are closed. The family restaurants around the industrial area no longer have customers. The cafes that were once bustling with workers are now only lit by the yellow glow emanating from dusty glass doors. And with that came the silent disintegration of a community. No longer with jobs, no longer with purpose, no longer with a place in the city they had once poured their sweat into building. Local authorities once promised retraining programs, but most of them didn't reach the people who needed them. And even if there were, could a 55-year-old who has worked with their muscles their whole life sit down at a desk to learn coding and start over? Opportunity is never fair when the system only offers it to those who know how to get through the door. The loss here isn't just about the number of jobs that have disappeared. It's about no one calling them by name anymore. There are no monuments to the mechanic, no tributes to the dock workers. They quietly disappeared from the payroll, from the tenant lists, from the healthcare system, and finally, from the city's very memory. If a city no longer has room for the people who built it with their own hands, then to whom does it still belong? And if losing your job can mean losing your right to exist with dignity, then what is the cost of development? There are changes that are quiet, not published in the newspaper, without signs or press conferences. But the people feel it, with every time they're turned away from the clinic, with every night they call the police and no one comes, with every food stamp that's cut short. In Oakland, such changes are happening every day, in a way that is most acutely felt by the most vulnerable. The city budget, like a depleted body, is gradually cutting each expense. Community health centers are only open a few days a week. Programs supporting the homeless are being replaced by pilot projects with a limited number of participants. Mobile health clinics, once a lifeline for the uninsured, now only appear on an intermittent schedule. There's no longer enough staff, no longer enough medicine, and most importantly, no longer the feeling that someone truly cares. The problem here isn't just a lack of budget, it's a city retreating from its most basic role, protecting its citizens. Older adults are no longer routinely measured for blood pressure. Children don't have free extra study places like before. And the homeless, they're still there, displaced from place to place, like nameless numbers in annual reports. A 67-year-old woman, a retired nurse, shared, "I used to believe that if I did the right thing and paid my taxes in full, I would be protected in my old age. But now, I feel like I'm just a burden on a system that doesn't even remember who I am." And as government support fades, many are forced to turn to self-help solutions, sometimes to brands that offer a sense of care, however small. If you're looking for ways to take care of yourself in the face of increasingly tight community health budgets, Silvercare Essentials offers at-home health checkup packages, nutritional supplements for seniors, and special discount programs for low-income individuals. Because when the system steps back, you still deserve to be protected. What kind of society will we become if every vulnerable person has to fend for themselves as if they are the only one facing difficulties? And if the city no longer reaches out, who will take their hand? In Oakland and across the United States, a quiet but large class is silently forming. Those who no longer belong anywhere. They weren't poor enough to get help, nor were they rich enough to live comfortably. They are not lazy or unemployed people. On the contrary, they work, sometimes to exhaustion, at 2, even 3 different jobs. However, after all that, they still couldn't afford a safe apartment, an unexpected medical bill, or even a short vacation to boost their spirits. Their income often exceeds the limit for receiving welfare benefits, but is not enough to live decently. A family of 4 in Oakland needs about $106,000 per year to live comfortably. But in reality, most households only earn between $75,000 and $90,000, meaning they are always in deficit. And just one shock, from an accident or illness to a rent increase, is enough to push them into debt or homelessness. These people were once the backbone of America, the ones who built communities, paid their taxes in full, and worked hard. But now they are no longer suitable for any support system. They don't have the power of the wealthy, nor the backing of policy advocacy groups. They're simply stuck in the middle. And over time, they felt increasingly abandoned, considered invisible. Consequence: they started giving up on every little thing. Fresh fruit is no longer served at breakfast. The dental appointment has been postponed indefinitely. Morning coffee, once a small pleasure, is now replaced with the cheapest kind from Great Value, Walmart, or bought in bulk from Kirkland Signature, Costco, to save every penny. They compare gas prices between stations, wait for promotions from apps like Upside, and choose to buy prescription drugs through GoodRx to cut down on already excessive healthcare costs. When large supermarkets like Aldi become a lifeline for dinner, It's no longer a consumer choice. It's a survival solution. Every dollar is carefully calculated. Every time I go to the supermarket, it's a dilemma between milk for my child or gasoline to go to work. The problem here isn't just low income. It's the absence of a system that can understand and support them. These people don't ask for pity. They just need a level playing field. But when all programs require proof that you are poor enough, while life forces you to spend like a rich person, then they fall into a state of not belonging anywhere. So, when the middle class, once the pride of America, is now the one taking the hit, does the American dream still belong to them? And if no one dares to say this, are we losing the most important part of the nation without anyone realizing it until it's too late? Oakland was once a place people flocked to start a dream. Now, it's become a place where thousands of people just want to leave as quickly as possible. And it's not just the poor. The entire middle class, entrepreneurs, those who once invested their careers and faith in this city, are also quietly retreating. According to the latest statistics, Oakland has lost nearly 109,000 residents in the last 5 years alone, a figure that is alarming for any urban area. But what's significant isn't just the numbers, but who is leaving and why. Families with young children are choosing to move to smaller cities like Elk Grove or Modesto. The elderly move in with relatives in the suburbs or relocate entirely to other states like Nevada, Arizona, or Idaho. They didn't leave because they didn't love the city, but because they could no longer afford to live and hope here. The reasons sound familiar. Housing prices are too high, security is deteriorating, and healthcare and education services are inadequate. But the consequences are much more serious. Each person who leaves is a piece of the puzzle removed from the community. It's a class that lacks teachers. A hospital is short of nurses. A small business no longer has regular customers. Even more frightening is the phenomenon of collective loss of faith, where people don't just leave to find cheaper options, but because they feel everything has spiraled out of control. Some people sell their homes for less than expected just to get out early. Others rented U-Haul trucks, packed them full of belongings, and started over from scratch, but with a sense of relief at finally leaving the city on a downward slide. The irony is, as people flee, the government loses an important source of revenue, leading to further cuts in healthcare, education, and housing budgets, pushing those who remain into a worse situation. That whirlwind of migration wasn't just a wave, it was a domino effect, where each layer of people leaving triggered the collapse of the entire urban social structure. So, what's left for a city when those who once believed in it the most are the first to leave? And if leaving is the only option left, is there anything left to call a community? Oakland was once a symbol of vitality, diversity, and seemingly endless opportunities. But as night falls, that city now reflects a fragmented America, where the light from skyscrapers is no longer enough to dispel the darkness that creeps through every alley, every gas station, every tent city. The numbers might still look good: income, education, and growth indicators. But if you walk the streets without feeling safe, if you can't find a decent home to live in, if your children can't go to school without fear, then what meaning do those numbers have? Oakland is not just a city, it's a metaphor for the question America is forced to confront. For whom are we building a society? And when even the hardest workers can't make ends meet, what will be left? If you've ever lived in, visited, or have a fond memory of Oakland, please share your story below. We can't change a city with just words, but perhaps all change begins with listening. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so we can continue to tell stories that not everyone is willing to listen to, but everyone needs to know. Each share is an opportunity to add one more person who understands, one more person who cares, and one more ray of hope for those whose lives are lived in silence. This video is not intended to condemn any organization, individual, or political group. All information presented is based on publicly available data, official reports, and field observations from multiple perspectives. The stories, images, and perspectives presented are educational in nature, reflecting social realities to stimulate constructive discussion without creating incitement, panic, or stereotyping. We do not condone any illegal behavior whatsoever. We do not normalize suffering, and we do not turn human misery into entertainment. This is not a conclusion, but an invitation to reflect together, to dialogue together, and to hold on to the remaining humanity within each of us.